Großartig. Die Geschwister Emily und Michael Bell, 15 und 17 Jahre alt, aus Essen, beide schon mit Preisen überschüttet, obwohl noch so jung und Jungstudierende. Michael in Essen an der Volkwang-Hochschule und Emily hier in Münster an der Jugendakademie. Das ist ein ganz besonderes Projekt von Musikschule und Musikhochschule, in dem eben Hochbegabte gefördert werden. Wir freuen uns, wenn wir nachher noch mal was von euch hören. Damit einen schönen guten Tag. Herzlich willkommen zur Verleihung des internationalen Preises des Westfälischen Friedens bewürdigen. Das Engagement für Demokratie und ein friedensorientiertes Zusammenleben. Die Preisträger stehen seit 1,5 Jahren fest. Alle haben lange darauf gewartet, dass es jetzt losgeht. Umso größer die Freude heute. Also nach der Euro 2020, den Olympischen Spielen 2020, jetzt der internationale Preis des Westfälischen Friedens. Prize of the Peace of Westphalia 2020, not as every year in the historic town hall, but here in what we call the light court of our museum, with many openings, windows, a lot of air, a special location. We are all 3 Gs, healthy, tested and vaccinated. Dear Es geht eine Auszeichnung, die ist gestiftet worden in Erinnerung an ein Ereignis, das schon mehr als 370 Jahre zurückliegt und das uns trotzdem immer noch sehr beeindruckt, weil dieser westfälische Friede eben einen furchtbaren, einen ewig langen Krieg in Europa beendet hat und einen sehr komplexen Konflikt, einfach weil die Mächtigen sich zusammengesetzt haben auf Augenhöhe und Kompromisse. Es geht also. Und dieser Preis tut etwas schon lange, worüber wir im Journalismus erst seit ein paar Jahren diskutieren. Konstruktiv sein. Constructive Journalism heißt das bei uns. Also nicht nur über Probleme reden, sondern auch über Lösungen. Gucken, was funktioniert, positiv verstärken. Eben die Lösungen in den Vordergrund rücken, weil wir sonst ja auch verzweifeln an der Welt. Das macht dieser Preis schon lange, das hat Tradition und es ist eben auch sehr modern. Verliehen wird der Preis von der Wirtschaftlichen Gesellschaft für Westfalen und Lippe, getragen vor allem von mittelständischen Unternehmen, auch von großen Familienunternehmen, die weltweit tätig sind. Eine überparteiliche Organisation, auch gut zu wissen jetzt im heißen Wahlkampf. Die Grenzen überwinden wir, Grenzen zwischen Staaten, auch Grenzen zwischen Politik und Wirtschaft und die sich generell einsetzt für Westfalen in Europa. Und hier ist der Vorsitzende der Wirtschaftlichen Gesellschaft für Westfalen und Lippe, auch Vorsitzender der Jury, der geschäftsführende Gesellschafter der Miele-Gruppe, Dr. Reinhard Zinkam. Bitte sehr.
Managing Director of Miele Company.
Meine sehr verehrte Herr Staatspräsident und Ministerpräsidenten, es ist uns allen eine große Ehre und eine große Freude, Sie heute in Münster herzlich willkommen zu heißen. Wir freuen uns, meine Damen und Herren, hier im Saal und auch Sie als Zuschauerinnen und Zuschauer an den Bildschirmen, dass Sie bei uns sind. Ein besonderes Willkommen gilt unseren Preisträgern, deren Persönlichkeiten und Wirken wir im Sinne der Zielsetzung und der Stiftung des Preises in diesem Fest abwürdigen wollen. So begrüße ich besonders seine Exzellenz, Herr Ministerpräsident Zoran Zaev. Herzlich willkommen, lieber Zoran. Und Sie, sehr geehrter Herr Ministerpräsident Adi Alexis Tsipras, herzlich willkommen. Preisträger haben mit diesem Abkommen erreicht, dass Jahrzehnte währende mazedonische Diskussionen um den Namen und Streitigkeiten zwischen ihren beiden Ländern gelöst werden konnten. Sie haben damit die Hindernisse zu gemeinsamen Perspektiven im Südosten Europas aus dem Weg geräumt. Wir sind, sehr geehrter Herr Präsident Lewitz, gespannt auf Ihre Ausführungen und wir freuen uns natürlich ganz besonders, weil Sie eines der Vorpreisträger repräsentieren. Denn wir durften ja den letzten Preis den 3 baltischen Staaten vertreten durch Ihre Staatspräsidentin hier in Münster verleihen. Und so freuen wir uns auch, dass zum zweiten Mal die Botschafterin des ehemaligen Preisträgerlandes Lettlands, Ihre Exzellenz, Frau Inga Studinja, unter uns ist. Ebenso willkommen heiße ich seine Exzellenz, Herrn Botschafter Ramadan Nazifi. Er repräsentiert Nordmazedonien in Berlin. Felix Finkbeiner begrüßen wir zusammen mit Jana Reiter. Sie nehmen als Jugendpreisträger unserer Auszeichnung stellvertretend für die vielen jungen Menschen entgegen, die sich für die Ziele von Plan for the Planet in der ganzen Welt einsetzen und aktiv daran mitarbeiten. Auch Ihr für unsere Klimazukunft wichtiges Engagement gehe ich gleich noch etwas näher ein. Besonders freut es mich, dass Sie, sehr geehrter Herr Landtagspräsident André Cooper, als Repräsentant unseres Bundeslandes Nordrhein-Westfalen hier unter uns sind. Herzlich willkommen. Und ich freue mich ebenso, Frau Regierungspräsidentin Dorothee Feller als Vertreterin unserer Heimatregion hier begrüßen zu dürfen.
The Lord Mayor representing our peace city of Münster of 1648. A especially warm welcome to you as well. Markus Lewe, of course, together with his wife, takes part in these festive events regularly toward this prize, and usually we actually are at the town hall. A warm welcome, Markus Lewe. Together with you for the 12th year, we will be commemorating the Peace of Westphalia, of Münster and Osnabrück. And the symbolic power is still strong today. Our honorary chairman of our jury, Federal President Frank-Walter Steinmeier, points this out very often when it comes to international politics and opportunities for a better understanding. He sends his best wishes, and I am delighted to convey them to you. We are so grateful to him for his commitment and support for our cause. A warm welcome to you, Honourable Bishop Genn. We are particularly happy that you were with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, we're in the atrium of the LWL Museum for Art and Culture. So for once, we're not in the town hall to celebrate the Peace of Westphalia and to award our prize for 2020. So thank you to the director of the LWL and our board member, Mr. Loeb. Thank you that we can be here in this impressive museum. So here we can see a very worthy setting, but at the same time we have a ventilation system which ties in with our hygiene concept, of course. And of course the 3G principle of either being healthy or tested or vaccinated or having recovered. Of course, this brings us to the issue of the pandemic. And at this point, I'd also like to mention the entrepreneurs who are here with us today. And it's fantastic that this region is such a vibrant region, and it's fantastic that the entrepreneurs make it possible that we can have this award ceremony every 2 years. So thank you so much for giving us the opportunity every 2 years to having such a wonderful celebration in Münster.
Damit ein Zeichen des Friedens, der Versöhnung und eines entspannten Miteinanders in der Völkergemeinschaft. Politik und Wirtschaft, meine Damen und Herren, wirken korrespondierend für die Menschen nicht nur hier in Westfalen. Wir brauchen uns gegenseitig überall. Und das für Frieden und das weltweit. Und Frieden braucht Prosperität, Wirtschaft braucht Frieden und Frieden braucht Wirtschaft.
Businesses need peace and vice versa. The 350th anniversary of the Peace of Westphalia, agreed in 1648 in Münster and Osnabrück, is the reason the Economic Society for Westphalia and Lippe has been honoring internationally renowned individuals and young people who lead by example. Our award honors commitment for peace, understanding, sustainability, and social responsibility. And that is what we are honoring today. Understanding is possible in a peaceful way if there is a will for this. The agreement which in 2018 the Prime Ministers in office, Alexis Tsipras and Zaev, fought for and negotiated against a lot of opposition in their own countries, and then with diplomatic skill brought into fruition. This is the reason that we as the jury and the Board of Trustees decided to honor you as the heads of state and government at the time for what you achieved for the Prespa Agreement. At the time, you sent out a signal for hope in Europe. You made it possible that North Macedonia found its way into the European Union, into NATO. We are proud and happy that the president of one of our former award winners from 2018 with us today from the Baltics, and he will honor this agreement later on. President Levits represents Latvia as an experienced politician, diplomat, jurist, and former judge at the European Court of Justice and European Court of Human Rights. He seemed predestined to speak for our laureates and to give the laudatory speech this year. For us in Central Europe, the future of smaller states on the border of the community and the meaning for their further development are especially important. So the look from Latvia to North Macedonia and Greece and the EU in general, that is not part of our political everyday life. But what is at stake here becomes very clear when we think about the fact that the migration development now is a direct topic in the Baltics as an important part of Europe. So this is the consequence of an incredibly aggressive behavior of the Belarusian dictator Lukashenko. And apart from this pressure to flee around the Mediterranean, we can also experience what is affecting the Baltic countries at the moment and affects all of us as a consequence in Europe. This is a problem that we can't leave to the affected bordering countries themselves. Europe as a community has to find a solution. The award of the Youth Prize is something that was decided by our bodies very early. So for several years, the idea and a possibly correct solution was very impressive for us. A path which at the time, in 2007, a 9-year-old pupil embarked on. He saw something which everybody realizes these days, because the future of our climate is at stake, the climate of the world. A year previously, a group of UN employees had started a project about the following issue: the CO2 emissions, which are man-made. How can this be reduced to zero? And at the same time, how can the excess CO2 be removed from the atmosphere? Felix Finkbeiner was the person who we can welcome as a young gentleman now. His father founded a foundation with him with the goal of, when it comes to children, young people and adults, heightening an awareness for climate change and for global justice. This is something which we will hear more about from Sana Röser, who represents the future generation of our entrepreneurs. So together we face a huge future task, and that is doing business successfully, but at the same time also striking a balance with climate justice. So-called greenwashing currently is very important in corporate action. So what is that? It's the attempt of companies and institutions, by donating money, to neutralize their CO2 consumption. And of course here it's important to seem very environment friendly, and this demand for reforestation certificates, for example, this is something that organizations have to be able to prove, and among our laureates, this led to debates and media coverages, which led to doubts. The open reaction of the foundation when it comes to critical reports about the effectiveness of their path actually reassured us. With the awarding of the Youth Prize, we made the right choice, and we are delighted that we will be able to honor you today. So now we're delighted to present the International Peace Prize. Unfortunately, our State Premier Armin Laschet can't be with us today because at the same time in Aachen, because of the current situation, a commemoration of the victims of the terrible flood catastrophe is taking place. Our thoughts are also with the people there and also with the victims of the dreadful fires in the Mediterranean. And this especially holds true for your country, my dear Mr. Tsipras Alexis. And now I'm delighted to give the floor to Susanne Wieseler, who will be leading us through this event today. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, President of the Economic Society for Westphalian Lippe, Dr. Zinkan. Thank you. The business community and politicians, bring them together. This is something your society endeavors to do. And one of the representatives of all this is Armin Laschet, Prime Minister of North Rhine-Westphalia. As you mentioned, he'd be with us normally as a matter of course, because he's one of the deciders. But in parallel, we do have this commemoration in the Aachen Cathedral for the victims of our flooding catastrophe a couple of weeks ago. But he sends a video message, and here he is. In 1648, when the 30 Years' War was ended with the Peace of Westphalia, the European continent had known 3 decades of unprecedented destruction, unbelievable suffering, and deep political and religious differences. Entire regions were devastated. Millions of people had died, victims of war and hunger, and many people then could not imagine what a peaceful living together could look like. Their doubts were justified, and during centuries, numerous wars followed. Again and again, they went beyond any power of imagination, and still, again and again, we could make peace. Some peace agreements were only of short duration, others dured over decades. After the end of World War II, the world being split into 2 major blocks, and a Cold War for decades. Again and again, very important steps were taken on this path to enduring peace, reconciliation. Again and again, courageous, bold people dared. I just mentioned Konrad Adenauer, the first Chancellor of the Federal Republic, Willy Brandt and his Eastern policy, Pope John II, Václav Gorbachev, Walesa, they all contributed to the fall of the Iron Curtain. And for us Germans, at the end of this path was Germany's unity in a Europe that has lived in peace for generations now. All this had never happened in the continent's history, but it must not make us forget that peace is nothing, by no means self-evident. We have to work for it every single day, and securing peace demands major sacrifices. The Afghanistan mission of the Federal Army has shown again as the vulnerability of a peace that was blown away days after the Western troops leaving. Still, we never must lose our hope and confidence that peace is feasible, and two very courageous men are honored today with this International Peace Prize, Alexis Tsipras and Zaev. They have succeeded something that others did not succeed in decades, ending the conflict between Greece and today's North Macedonia, creating peace. For decades, this conflict has been a major obstacle and triggered nationalism that we thought we had overcome. That was a very dangerous mixture right in the heart of Europe. We have to thank these two statesmen, and I'd like to congratulate you with major respect to this highly deserved prize. Second, I'd like to congratulate Plant for the Planet. Very committed young people. As early as 13 years ago, they have made the climate change their major issue, not theoretically, but in very practical terms, because they want to bring very specific contributions against climate change and for survival of humanity. For very long, this has turned into a worldwide, into a global movement. And if you know that climate policy is always necessarily peace policy, you can measure and assess what these young people do for us all. My deepest respect, my warmest thanks, and I hope that many people will want to follow these role models at a very high level and, if you want, at a low level. Minister President Laschet started in Münster with his words. Münster, a city that makes me think that maybe it's really a bit more peaceful. It's a bit more relaxed than other cities. Normally, it would be the Lord Mayor here, because we are normally at the historic town hall. We are now in the Modern Arts Museum, much air and light, but the Lord Mayor of Münster loves to be here. He accepted to come. Here's Markus Lever.
Excellency President Lewis, awardees, Dr. Zinkan, Madiraina, Mrs. Zinkan, guests, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, I am delighted and happy that we're able to meet again in this form. Unfortunately, not in the town hall, but in this beautiful, wonderful atrium of the Museum LWL for Art and Culture. So thank you so much to Matthias Wöb. Thank you so much to the director for making it possible for us to be here today, and I'm delighted that 1 year later we can celebrate this award ceremony. So for us as the city of Münster, for the citizens, it is so important, it is an honor for us that you, Excellency, the Prime Minister of the Republic of North Macedonia, Zoran Zaev, and the former Prime Minister of Greece, Alexis Tsipras, that you have come here to Münster to receive the Peace Prize yourselves. And I would just like to express the warmest possible welcome from all the people of Münster. Thank you for being here. A very warm welcome to the ambassadors for climate justice from Plant for the Planet, as another laureate of the Peace Prize of Westphalia, so Jana Reiter and Felix Finkbeiner. You make it clear that without peace there's no climate protection and vice versa. This is the message that you stand up for, and we're so grateful to you because we need you and you need us as well. Ladies and gentlemen, the awarding of the International Peace Prize of Westphalia is the occasion for many important stakeholders from politics, business and society to come together. And of course, we're proud to welcome you to Münster because you all work on the future in a constructive way. I'm especially delighted that we are connected with our university, which is represented here as well, but also with our city, and that we have so much communal responsibility that we assume. And we're also delighted that Henriette Rieke from Cologne is here. Thank you for being here, Henriette. Ladies and gentlemen, as the city of the Treaty of Westphalia, Münster feels a special connection and obligation for peace. In 1648, when this peace came about, because what happened in the town hall and the sculpture from Eduardo Chilide and tolerance and everything that is involved here with the International Peace Prize of Westphalia, you can really feel that this topic is omnipresent. So it was 373 years ago, after 30 years of ravaging war, a framework was created where it became possible to build peace. Not in terms of capitulation or victory, no, negotiations on an equal level and then legal frameworks. That is what happened with the peace of 1648. So what does that mean internationally, globally? You can see that when taking into consideration that the Westphalian system was created afterwards based on the principles of sovereignty, territoriality, and especially equality of states. So up until today, one of the pillars of our international laws can be seen here. Without any doubt, peace gives rise to a peaceful coexistence. It promotes solidarity. But peace in itself, of course, is something that we all have to work for individually every day. Especially if we take into consideration what kind of conflicts, tensions, divides are affecting us currently. So there's this rise of populism in Germany, but also in Europe. The lasting conflicts in the Middle East and the horrendous situation in Afghanistan. Peace, unfortunately, is fragile. It can't be taken for granted. For us people, it seems to be difficult to create peace, to maintain peace, and especially to live together in peace. So looking at the situation that we are in at the moment, it becomes clear that fundamental values such as peace, mutual respect, tolerance, and justice mean so much more than ever before. They are the preconditions for us to live together in harmony, people, cultures, nations. The power of the peace order of the Peace of Westphalia is something which is strong today still. And with this awards ceremony in Münster, this really strengthens the vision for peace, not only in Münster, not only in Europe, in the world, and in all people's hearts. The laureates this year have shown exceptional commitment to peace. They are shining examples for commitment to peace. My dear guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure that you, with your presence, when it comes to the laureates of the International Peace Prize of Westphalia 2020, that you are showing your respect to them. They do so much for peace in the world, and that is more important than ever before. A warm welcome to the Peace City of Münster.
Mr. Lord Mayor of the City of Münster, Markus Lewe, we heard something about our two laureates today, the Minister-President, Prime Minister of North Macedonia, and the then head of government of Greece, Alexis Tsipras. These two bold men stretched their hands out at a very, very dangerous moment to overcome an extremely dangerous conflict. What this means, what this looks like, let's take a look at this. This is the red carpet, showing the end of a long-lasting conflict. The Greek Prime Minister, Felix Tsipras, visits Skopje for the first time, capital of North Macedonia. Zoran, hi, he asks, are you happy with this? This is making history. It's new history, answers Zoran Zaev. History securing peace and opening international doors for North Macedonia. Greece is the first country favoring negotiations about the NATO entry of North Macedonia. My friend Alexis and myself, we want to have negotiations for North Macedonia becoming member of the European Union. I want to thank Zoran. It's a very important moment for Greece and North Macedonia, a very important day for the Balkans. Years before, in this name dispute, any agreement seemed impossible. Beginning of the 90s, no more Yugoslavia, the southern part being Republic Macedonia, and also the northern part of Greece, what Greece cannot accept. Greece wants to show strength. A trade embargo in 1990 against the neighboring country, and the Greeks were against NATO and EU entry of North Macedonia. We are not going to sell our country to betray our Macedonia. These people wanted the Macedonian Republic. They are selling our name. They are traitors. Here they are, Tsipras and Zaev. But they didn't give up. In summer 2018, the breakthrough, a very bold, courageous compromise. It's now the Republic North Macedonia entering into force in spring 2019. We are proud because we have found a solution that unites us. Let's stand together today and all the time. The first time in former Yugoslavia, a conflict is overcome peacefully, bringing stability to the region of the Balkans. This is why the jury and the Economic Society has decided to honor these two personalities with the International Prize of the Westphalian Peace. You have to be impressed by the way they fought for peace. And his laudatory speech, the Latvian president, Egils Levits, is now honoring this. A man of law, having close relations to the city of Münster. He went to school here in the 70s, the Latvian high school. He studied politics. He worked in Germany as a lawyer. And when Latvia reached its independence, he went back home for some political activity. He used to be ambassador in Germany, Minister of Justice in Latvia, and then judge at the European Court for Human Rights, more than 20 years. In 2019, he became president of Latvia. And since this is a Baltic state, one of the three states that were awarded this Peace Prize in 2018. We are looking forward to the Latvian president talking about this award ceremony. Your look at the southeast of Europe, the name conflict. Please, Mr. Levitz, the floor is yours. Ich gehe mal runter schnell. 2 Minuten.
Sehr geehrter Herr Oberbürgermeister, sehr geehrter Herr Dr. Zinkan und Vertreter der Wirtschaftsgesellschaft für Westfalen und Lippe. Meine Damen und Herren, die Bundesrepublik Deutschland, die Stadt Münster und die Wirtschaftliche Gesellschaft für Westfalen und Lippe haben beschlossen,
for the first time, because in 2018, my country, Latvia, together with our 2 Baltic neighbors, Estonia and Lithuania, which all awarded the Prize of Westphalia. And then the second time, because they gave the honor and responsibility to my country to give the laudatory speech for the most recent edition of the Peace Prize of Westphalia. And the Prime Minister of the Republic of North Macedonia and the former Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras of Greece are honored. My delight to be in Münster today is also very personal nature, because 49 years ago, at the time I was a 17-year-old man, and my family came to Germany from my hometown, which was occupied by the Soviets, and I obtained my A-levels at the Latvian grammar school here. And then 10 years later, I taught politics and history as a teacher at the Latvian grammar school. So this historic and at the same time very young university city of Münster, with its Latvian center and the Latvian grammar school, for the Latvians in exile, it was basically a type of hub of Latvia in the free world. And Münster is very diverse and vibrant. Today in Münster we'll be honouring 2 European statesmen. Their great achievement is the conclusion of the Prespa Agreement of the 12th of June 2018, with which the long ongoing differences between the 2 neighbouring states of Greece and North Macedonia were overcome. So these issues were about the name of the Republic of North Macedonia, and they were rooted in different perspectives of the history of this region and the identity of the nations there. The Prespa Agreement reached a new level where the different opinions about the name and the different historical points of views were included and integrated into a new perspective. And now living together in friendship is possible with regards to these 2 nations. So with this agreement, the way for North Macedonia was paved for NATO and for the EU in the future as well. So what place could be better suited to honor the 2 statesmen and these people who laid the legal groundwork for lasting good neighborly ties than Münster here, in this city where 373 years ago the Treaty of Westphalia was signed. At the time, the Peace of Westphalia meant that the 30 Years' War in Germany came to an end, as well as the 80-year-long Dutch War of Independence. So these wars went on for generations and caused havoc in large parts of Europe. The most important quintessence of the Peace of Westphalia was that this peace agreement created a new international order in Europe, a new order of equality when it comes to sovereign states in legal terms. So as a jurist, I can say that in terms of international law, and a new era was ushered in, an era of a modern state, a sovereign national state, and here the essence was that there was a solid legal footing. The Westphalian peace order was born. The borders today are different than in the past, but Europe, the political map of Europe would be inconceivable today without the Peace of Westphalia. The Westphalian peace order created a new approach of states when it comes to their coexistence. And this new approach of sovereignty according to international law and equality of all states, this is something that we still benefit from today. The Westphalian Peace Treaty of 1648 enshrined these principles for the first time, and this still is the basis for the international peace order. So these principles are the basis for the Charter of the United Nations of 1945. Although today, almost 4 centuries later, the role of the sovereign state domestically but also internationally have changed fundamentally, but still the sovereign state in Europe in shape of national states remains completed by the European Union and other international units, and still the focus is on every nation because this is the core of democracy. Politicians and warlords who were involved at the time, they were not aware of the consequences that would still have impacts hundreds of years later. And now, of course, this is the basis for international law. So a new beginning in Europe became possible. The warlords at the time actually decided that their own interests had to take a back seat. Sometimes that was painful for them, but after decades of war, of havoc, this seemed actually the better option. There are good compromises and there are bad compromises. A good compromise at the end means that there are no losers, just winners. By transposing former opposing interests into a new, higher order, they become solved and the way is paid for a fruitful cooperation of former opponents. In the case of the Peace of Westphalia, the military, political interests and so on and so forth, of course, had to be reconciled, and the different interests when it came to the Prespa Agreement were actually quite different. So there were different cultural points of view in terms of history and the present. And basically, a power political reconciliation is easy to achieve, as opposed to reconciling different points of view regarding history and the world in general. So when there are power political or other reconciliations, then you can calculate profits and loss, you can negotiate. But so it's easier to give up something that you had in the past and then compare what you might gain in the future. However, when there are different points of view regarding the world, everything is much more complicated because the different points of view are difficult to compare. There seems to be a lack of shared currency. We should always be aware that our own history and present are influenced by the way we see the world, and of course that this can change and there are differences to the way our neighbors say things. So everybody basically has their own experience and they experience their world in their own unique way. That's why we people are so unique. But nations also have different experiences which shape them. And this is something that becomes very clear, for example, when history is evaluated. And yeah, we the Latvian people see the world very differently and experience it very differently as well compared to our hosts today, the Germans. And that also holds true in the following case. It is this path which our laureates today embarked on. The different points of view regarding the world, history, their own nations. They reconciled these things and they found a higher level where a compromise and a joint vision was possible. Both states are European states. European states That's not just a geographical term or political term. That's not just the member states of the European Union. So they are all democratic states in Europe which have different ties, cultural ties, economic ties, and so on and so forth. And in our part of the world, they are connected this way. So you, my dear laureates, with the Prespa Agreement, did not only sign a legal document. No, for both states and for the region as a whole, you overcame a difficult problem and you found a true, convincing European solution instead. The path was long and hard. Both sides in 1995 signed an interim agreement, and at the time the signing parties were still referred to as the parties on the one side and the parties on the other side, and the names of your nations were not even mentioned in this text. But today, 26 years later, now that you have reached this historic agreement and signed it, my dear Alexis and Zoran, please allow me to name you by your names and not to refer to you as the parties on the one or the other side anymore. The guiding principle behind the agreement that you concluded is Europe. Europe as the joint economic, political, cultural sphere in which our nations live together in peace, in harmony, and shape our future together. Of course, this agreement is of pivotal importance for both nations involved, North Macedonia and Greece, and this agreement also has a positive effect on all European nations, Latvia too, because this was the source, of course, for conflict for many years on our continent, and then this was overcome. So the effects on the security and political situation in our part of the world is very clear. The Prespa Agreement paved the way for acceding to NATO 2 years later, and that means that the most successful defense alliance became even more stronger and Europe became even more secure. After becoming a NATO member, after the Republic of North Macedonia became a NATO member, the missing jigsaw piece, clarity when it comes to the future of West Balkans in Europe, this then followed, and this future task is something that the credibility of the European Union will be measured at. So it's my heartfelt desire that the Prespa Agreement becomes the standard and an incentive to solve this great task, and that North Macedonia will become a member of the European Union. Alexis, Zoran. In a dialogue, you decided on a win-win solution in the spirit of being magnanimous, and in doing so for your nations and for Europe, you achieved so much. You insisted on objective criteria and focused on the essentials in your negotiations. You strove to have a result based on standards, and you achieved this. You formulated your argumentations together, and you did not close off to the concerns and arguments of the others. So reason led you and not irrational pressure. You focused on the cause, not on the pressure. This is what negotiations which are true to principles are all about. And with this, you have an example which is an inspiration for the future in the Balkans and beyond. My dear laureates, ladies and gentlemen, here in Münster, 373 years ago, the new International League
und Gleichheit aller Staaten beruht. Diese Grundsätze, die ebenfalls in der Charta der Vereinten Nationen niedergelegt sind, sind auch weiterhin ohne Abstriche gültig. Sie sind Grundlage für den Frieden in der Welt. Doch sind wir auch jetzt bewusst, dass viele Probleme, mit denen wir in der Welt des 21. Jahrhunderts konfrontiert werden und die neuen Herausforderungen, die wir in naher Zukunft bewältigen müssen, nicht mehr auf nationale Grenzen begrenzt sind.
In conclusion, I would like to quote the words of Kofi Annan 13 years ago when he received the same award here in Münster. He said that national sovereignty is not merely a privilege of states, but it's their responsibility to improve the life of their people. At the end of the day, for the well-being of nations and the international community as a whole, it is decisive how we deal with the sovereignty of our states. You, gentlemen, Alexis Tsipras and Zoran Zaev, as representatives of your states and their sovereignty, you created a strong foundation for good neighborly ties between both nations, and you achieved something truly exceptional. So for this fantastic achievement, you truly deserve the Peace Prize of Westphalia. Thank you for your attention.
Please stay with us, Mr. Levitz, and I ask onto the stage Zoran Zaev,
den Ministerpräsidenten von
Jetzt die leave the horses on the place. We'll feed them later. Just leave the horses.
Почитувани пријатели, почитуван доктор Рајхард Зинк, председавач на економското општество на Вестфалија или ИПА, почитуван председател на Латвија Елгис Левиц, драг мој пријател Алексис, почитуван градоначалнику, ви благодарам за гостопримството, почитуван председател на парламентот, дами и господа, ме представува голема чест и привилегија да ја добијам меѓународната награда за мир на Вестфалија за 2020. Голема чест е во моје име и во името на моето име и името на мојот пријател Felix Ципрас ќе бидат додадени на бројните добитници на оваа награда, и тоа имиња познати како што се Вацлав Хавел, Хелмут Кол, Валери Жискар д'Естен, Кофи Анан, Хелмут Шмидт. и екипите на меѓународните свемирски станици, трите држави Латвија, Летонија, Естонија и Литванија. Меѓународната награда за мир на Вестфалија наградува ликови или представници на држави и групи кои биле посебно посветени на европската интеграција и мирот во Европа. Сакам со сите вас да ја споделам приказната на две земји кои беа посветени на Европа и на мирот во еден од најубавите пејзажи на Европа, во недопрената природа на Преспанското езеро, каде што се соединуваат границите на Албанија, Грција и Македонија. На 17 јуни 2018 година го подпишавме историскиот Преспански договор, кој со доколку ако договорот на Вестфалија од 1684 беше пресвртна точка за во развивање на европската способност да живее во религиозна разновидност, Преспанскиот договор е пресвртната точка за нашиот регион. Дури и првиот член од по договорот за мир на Вестфалија и не зборува за мир, туку за пријателство. Вистинско, искрено пријателство помеѓу подписниците. Тоа е она што представува и Преспанскиот договор. Со овој договор ставивме крај на еден спор и долгогодишни разлики кои што кренат зид помеѓу нас и на тој начин отежнувајќи ги соседските односи меѓу Северна Македонија и Грција. Спорот траеше 3 декади, исполнети со несигурност за нашата иднина, 3 декади на сериозни загриженост во однос на несаканите последици, 3 декади на блокирани перспективи кои што се од клучни стратегиски интерес за нашата земја, за регионот и за евроатлантските структури. Иднината беше водечката идеја во текот на целиот процес и двете страни префатија компромисите како знак на пријателство и загриженост и грижа за интересите на ваши политички партнери, како и собствените интереси. Пријателството беше важно за создавање атмосфера во која што отворено разговараме за сите прашања, дури и кога се чини дека не постои решение. Во текот на целиот процес инсистиравме на тоа дека не зборуваме за црвени линии. Според двајцата нас, таквите црвени линии се ограничувачки и оставаат во еден затворен простор, во кутија, и ние рековме нема да дозволиме процесот да заврши така ограничен. На тој начин соработуваат пријателите со фокус на решението, градејќи мостови, а не подигнувајќи зидови. Кои се предизвиците, што представуваат предизвиците ако не можности за решение, за креативни решенија и чекор кон остварување на нашата визија. Затоа Алексис и јас одбравме да најдеме решение, не да го одолжуваме процесот кој е украсен со овакви доблести, оној што го одолговлекува проблемот или оној што прифаќа да го реши. И јас и Алексис целосно сме свесни дека ги изложивме нашите политички кариери на ризик, меѓутоа црстата определеност и подготвеноста да се жртвува нашата политичка кариера во името на еднината не водеше низ целиот процес, кога од друга страна ќе видите од другата страна на преговорачката маса лице кое што е фокусирано на решенија, лице со кој што ги делите истите политички вредности и ги имате сите неопходни состојки за пријателски однос и атмосфера во која што може да се постигне заемно прифатливо решение за проблемот. Па уште поважно е тоа што овој вид однос станува мотивирачки сам по себе и се преточува во пријателство и двајцата го внесовме таквиот однос во темелите на едните односи меѓу нашите земји. Значи, тоа е најскапата придобивка. Одбравме да најдеме решение, адмиратото зад нас наоѓајќи решенија за нашите народи. Како пример за европско лидерство дојдовме до решение за кое што сите тврдеа дека невозможно да се постигне. Оваа година Северна Македонија слави 30 години независност и со задоволство можам да ви кажам дека нашата 30 годишнина, ние сме 30-та членка на НАТО и тоа е возможно поради Преспанскиот договор. Чест ми е дека имав можност да го исполнам сонот на многу генерации граѓани на Северна Македонија. Членството во НАТО представува реализација на нашата стратегиска цел и доказ за нашите политички постигнувања. Членството во НАТО е одраз на нашата суверен избор и сведок за нашите обштествена цел, а тоа е да станеме целосно интегрирани во евроатлантското семејство на народи. Денес Северна Македонија има подобрена безбедност и стабилност и следствено каква е ситуацијата во целиот регион на Западен Балкан. Ние сме посветени на визијата на Балкан од 21 век како регион на мир, стабилити и за јакната регионална соработка за економски придобивки на сите земји. Нашата стратегиска цел е целосно членство, полноправно членство во Европската Унија. Уште сме на тој пат кон Европската Унија. Евроатлантската иднина е еден стимул за економски раст, за инвестиции, за повеќе трговија, пристап до единствениот пазар на Европската Унија, зголемена мобилност на луѓето, стоките и капиталот, пониски стапки ќе се спречи со тоа одлив на мозоците, со така што младите ќе останат во земјата. Добри соседски односи и регионална соработка остануваат нашите заеднички приоритети и стратегиски цели и работиме на тоа да ја оствариме нашата амбиција од аспект на европската интеграција. Посветени сме на визија на еден Балкан на 21 век како регион на мир, стабилност и зголемена регионална соработка за економска придобивки и просперитет на сите граѓани. Сега е време да се обединиме во однос на фактот дека историјата е важен дел од нашите идентитети. Меѓутоа, визијата за еднината има посебно место во нашето, зазема посебно место во вашите срца. Уште еднаш сакам да ја изразам мојата длабока благодарност за меѓународната награда за мир на Вестфалија. Оваа награда истовремено представува и признание, но и обврска за сите наши и идни политички одлуки да бидат посветени на европските вредности и мирот кои немаат алтернативи. Ви благодарам.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here in this historical town, in this historical place. Dear Chairman, dear Reichard, Mr. President of Latvia, Lord Major, my dear friend Zoran, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to warmly thank the Economic Association of Westphalia and Lippe on receiving this important Peace Prize. A prize that I have the honor of sharing with Prime Minister of North Macedonia. And I would like also to thank the President of Latvia for his words. Historically, the Balkans have been a very difficult region to promote peace. We have seen war burn the hopes of many generations and nationalism destroy the branches of peace and prosperity when they were starting to grow. This is why the goal of the Prespa Agreement was to develop deep roots in the conscience of our peoples and the relations between our two countries. We wanted an agreement under the United Nations that would last and not fall apart at the first difficulty. An agreement that would not only resolve the differences between us, but bind us in a new strategic partnership in order to confront challenges and seize opportunities together. This was not easy, particularly at a time when both our countries were in economic crisis and at the front line of the worst refugee crisis after the Second World War. It was not easy at the time of national retrenchment and Brexit in the European Union. It was not easy at a time when the European Union had frozen the enlargement process and was interested in the Balkans mostly to control migration flows. At a time when the United States were moving away from multilateral diplomacy, and at a time when nationalist forces were strong in our countries as well as the rest of Europe. But the people of Greece and North Macedonia proved that common problems can be solved peacefully and on the basis of international law, even at the most difficult moment. They can be solved if we keep an open mind, we have the necessary political will, and we speak on the basis of mutual respect. We proved that Europe can be a catalyst for peace and stability instead of waiting for others to take the lead or kicking the can down the road or making statements that mean nothing to people's lives. Today, this message is even more important than it was in 2018 that we signed the agreement or in 2019. The experience of the global pandemic crisis, as well as the developments we see in Afghanistan, should be giving us a lesson that we cannot go back to the economic and geostrategic models of the last 40 years. It must be clear that in these extraordinary conditions, the European Union will fail as an international force if it does not develop a clear, reliable, assertive voice for peace. And peace means resolving regional differences, protecting international law, and promoting sustainable development and social justice. When it comes to regional differences, the clearest test is in Europe itself, the Western Balkans, the Cyprus issue, and the Eastern Mediterranean. The European Union must support the Prespa agreement actively. It must do whatever it takes to hold intergovernmental conferences for North Macedonia and Albania, as well as to make progress in the Belgrade-Pristina talks. And the European Union must give a clear message to Turkey that the only possible solution for the Cyprus issue is the reunification of the island on the basis of the United Nations Security Council resolutions. It must underline that relations will improve only if it respects the sovereign rights of Greece and the Republic of Cyprus. But also, the European Union also must deal with conflict resolution on the broader region. It must take the lead, together with the United States, in establishing a new security architecture in the broader region that includes regional powers, as well as Russia and China, depending on the conflict zone. In the case of Afghanistan, in particular, the European Union must support such a framework. It must also support neighboring countries in hosting Afghans, but also organize a resettlement program of Afghan refugees to the European Union directly from these countries with specific quotas. In terms of social justice, the European Union must make even more steps in confronting the pandemic and growing inequalities. For example, it is more important than ever to accept the proposal of the World Health Organization on waiving the patents on vaccines to strengthen vaccination programs in the developing world. And of course, it is extremely important that Europe makes even more steps in the just transition to a green agenda against the climate crisis. Today, it is our honor to share this prize with the organization Plant for the Planet that has planted millions of trees. As you know, this year alone, hundreds of thousands of acres of forest land were burned by wildfires in my country, in Greece, but also in North Macedonia. Ladies and gentlemen, centuries after they were signed, we honor the treaties of Westphalia because they established a new framework for interstate relations on which peace was built. Today, more than ever, we need a new balanced international framework aimed at promoting peace through initiatives on all the levels I mentioned before. Particularly after the German and French elections, I think it is time that the European Union takes the lead in this direction. And I'm convinced that the Prespa Agreement can contribute significantly to this necessary new European and global vision as a model on how to resolve differences peacefully, protect national interest, and build trust and cooperation even in the most difficult times. I think that this is our legacy, my dear friend Zoran. So I want to thank you, all of you, to thank very much all of you. It is a great honor for us and a great honor for our people, because I want you to know that the most important prize, it is the fact that now our people can be in a cooperation mood and can invest in the future in peace and stability and cooperation in our region. Thank you very much.
Felix Finkbeiner, meine Damen und Herren, bevor es gleich mit dem Jugendpreis weitergeht, können wir das alles ein bisschen sacken lassen bei einer Runde Musik. Theresia Volbers spielt Blockflöte, sie ist 15 Jahre alt, Münsterländerin und wird auch gefördert an der Jugendakademie, dem schon erwähnten Projekt von Musikschule und Musikhochschule. Sie spielt zusammen mit Clara Fönis. Clara ist 17 aus Münster und sie spielt ein besonderes Cello, ein Barock-Cello. Beide sind auch schon mit wirklich unzähligen Preisen bedacht worden. Auch Clara wurde an der Jugendakademie gefördert. Viel Vergnügen mit den beiden.
Enjoy.